"You selfish trash," my mother Angela screamed across the terrace of the Sapphire Hotel. The ceramic pot in her hand tilted and then the heat hit me. Scalding, fresh brewed coffee poured directly over my head, burning my scalp, running down my neck and soaking into my thrifted gray hoodie. The pain was immediate and shocking, a physical assault that stole the breath from my lungs. But the sound that followed was worse. It wasn't a gasp of horror, it was laughter. My brother Christopher and my sister Amanda already had their phones out filming. The red recording lights blinked like tiny malicious eyes. I sat there, liquid dripping from my eyelashes, physical pain radiating down my spine, and realized with absolute clarity the bridge wasn't just burned, it had been nuked. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I stood up. I didn't wipe the coffee from my face. I didn't look at my mother, who was now panting, her chest heaving with the exertion of her rage. I walked straight to the hotel bathroom, the heels of my boots clicking a steady rhythm against the marble floor. Inside, I locked the door and leaned over the sink. My reflection stared back, hair matted with dark liquid skin turning an angry, blistering red along my hairline and neck. The urge to scream was a physical thing, a creature clawing at the back of my throat. I wanted to howl. I wanted to storm back out there and flip the table to shatter their expensive china and their fragile egos. I wanted to make them feel the heat that was currently searing my skin. But then I looked closer at my own eyes in the mirror. They weren't teary. They were cold. If I screamed, I gave them content. If I cried, I gave them satisfaction. They thrived on chaos, on the noise of dysfunction. My mother with her image-obsessed perfectionism, and my siblings with their desperate need for attention, they were vampires of reaction. They wanted a fight because a fight meant I still cared. A fight meant we were still playing the game. Silence, on the other hand. Silence is a mirror. When you don't scream back at a monster, the monster is left screaming into a void, hearing only the echo of its own ugliness. By denying them my rage, I was denying them their fuel. I grabbed a handful of paper towels and dabbed the worst of the liquid from my neck. The skin was tender, already peeling slightly. I hissed through my teeth but kept my face neutral. I wasn't going to give them a single frame of footage that showed me breaking. I walked back out to the terrace. The table was quiet now, but the energy was electric with malice. Christopher smirked, his phone still raised. Amanda was typing furiously, probably already drafting the caption. Angela stood with her arms crossed, waiting for the apology she believed she was owed. I walked to the table. I didn't sit. I pulled my wallet from my damp hoodie pocket. I took out 4 $20 bills, exactly $80. My share of the breakfast I hadn't eaten. I placed the bills on the white tablecloth right next to the empty coffee pot. I smoothed them out, ensuring they were perfectly flat. Then I turned and walked away. "That's right, run away," Christopher called after me. "Go cry in your truck." I kept walking. I didn't look back. The silence I left behind was heavier than any scream could have been. It was the sound of a door closing, locking, and being welded shut. They thought they had won because they held the camera. They didn't realize they had just filmed their own execution. I climbed into my 10-year-old Subaru, the smell of stale coffee filling the cab. My hands trembled as I put the key in the ignition, not from fear but from the adrenaline crash. I drove out of the hotel parking lot, merging onto the highway, putting miles between me and the people who shared my DNA. The conflict had started over something so banal it was almost funny. Christopher had cornered me before the food arrived. He needed $50,000, an investment he called it for his luxury watch dealership. "Inventory is tight," he'd said, flashing a smile that was all teeth and desperation. "I just need a bridge loan." "You can put it on a credit card, Emma. You have good credit, right?" He didn't know I had sold my AI safety company SafeMind to Google DeepMind 3 weeks ago for $110 million. He didn't know my net worth was currently sitting at $250 million. He thought I was a struggling freelance coder who lived in a cabin because I couldn't afford the city. When I refused calmly, politely, the veneer cracked. "You're so selfish," he'd sneered. "Mom pays for everything for us and you can't even help with a loan." That was the trigger. My refusal to fund their delusions. My family lived a life of paper tiger wealth. Christopher drove a leased Range Rover he was 2 payments behind on. Amanda was a lifestyle coach who lived in a condo paid for by our parents' dwindling retirement fund. Angela wore designer labels that she bought on consignment and returned after wearing. Their entire existence was a series of liabilities dressed up as assets. They owned nothing but debt and appearances. I looked down at my jeans and the coffee-stained hoodie. I owned my truck. I owned my cabin. I owned my intellectual property. And as of 3 weeks ago, I owned enough capital to buy and sell their entire zip code. It's the ability to say no without fear. They hated me not because I was poor, but because they sensed that freedom on me, and it terrified them. They were drowning in payments and perceptions, and I was standing on solid ground. My scalp throbbed, a sharp reminder of the price of that freedom. I drove toward the urgent care clinic, my mind already shifting gears. The emotional part of my brain wanted to curl up and weep for the mother I never had. The logical part, the CEO part, was already filing the police report in my head. They had wanted to teach me a lesson about my place in the family. They were about to learn a very expensive lesson about mine in the world. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. It was a hostile takeover. And I had never lost a negotiation. My apartment was quiet, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator and the stinging hiss of the burn spray I applied to my scalp. The mirror showed the damage clearly. A blister was forming just behind my left ear, and the skin along my hairline looked like raw meat. I didn't cover it. I wanted to see it. I wanted to remember exactly what $50,000 worth of rejection looked like. My phone sitting on the bathroom counter lit up. Then again. Then a steady, vibrating buzz that didn't stop. I dried my hands and picked it up. It wasn't an apology. It was a notification from TikTok. Someone had tagged me, or rather an old account I barely used. I opened the app. There was Christopher's face, smug and filtered, filling the screen. The video started. I watched myself sitting at the table, head bowed, coffee dripping from my chin while my mother screamed. The caption overlay read in bright yellow text, "When your broke sister tries to ruin brunch, putting out the trash." I scrolled to the comments. They were exactly what Christopher wanted. "She looks like a wet rat," one user wrote. "Serves her right for mooching," said another. My sister Amanda had shared it to her Instagram story with a crying, laughing emoji and the text, "Karma is served hot." I set the phone down. They were celebrating. They were high on the dopamine of likes and the validation of their own echo chamber. They genuinely believed they had won. They thought this was the end of the story, the part where the trash gets taken out and the winners go back to their mimosas. They didn't understand that on the internet, context is a currency and the market was about to crash. I didn't report the video. I didn't comment. I took a screenshot of the post, a screenshot of the caption, and a screenshot of the timestamps. I saved them to a folder on my encrypted drive labeled evidence. Then I went to the kitchen and made myself a cup of tea. Not coffee, never coffee again. I sat by the window and waited for the algorithm to do what it does best, find the truth. By Monday morning, the atmosphere had shifted. The air felt heavy, like the pressure drop before a hurricane. I was in my home office, a converted bedroom in my cabin, overlooking the valley, reviewing code for a new neural network architecture, when my personal cell phone rang. It was Elena, my head of public relations. "Emma," she said, her voice tight. "Have you seen Twitter?" "I've seen TikTok," I replied, typing a command into my terminal. "It breached containment," Elena said. "It hit tech Twitter about an hour ago. A former intern recognized you. The view count is at 4 million and climbing vertically. They know who you are, Emma. They know you founded SafeMind. They know about the DeepMind acquisition." I pulled up Twitter on my second monitor. The hashtag SafeMind was trending. The top post was a side-by-side comparison, one image of me on the cover of Wired magazine looking polished and formidable. The other a blurry screenshot from Christopher's video of me soaked in coffee. The caption read, "This family just assaulted one of the most important women in AI because she wouldn't loan them 50 grand. They have no idea she's worth 9 figures." The comments were a landslide of horror. "That's Angela Mercer," one user identified. "She's on the board of the Arts Council." Disgusting. Another user had already found Christopher's dealership. "This guy sells watches on commission and he's bullying a self-made multimillionaire. The math ain't mathing." "Do you want us to issue a takedown?" Elena asked. "We can have it scrubbed. Harassment policy violation. It'll be gone in 10 minutes. "No," I said. My voice was calm, steady. "Leave it up." "Emma, it's humiliating." "It's not humiliating for me, Elena. It's illuminating for everyone else. Let it play. Let them see exactly who these people are." I hung up. The narrative had flipped. I wasn't the broke sister anymore. I was the underdog titan. The public didn't just see a family squabble. They saw a group of parasites attacking the host. I watched the retweet counter spin like a slot machine. The villain's escalation had just met the professional escalation. They wanted attention. I was going to give them the world. Tuesday morning. Christopher stood on the showroom floor of Timeless Luxury, adjusting his cuffs. He was probably checking his phone, waiting for more likes, unaware that the ground beneath his feet had already liquefied. He didn't know that my venture capital firm Apex Ventures had been busy over the weekend. We hadn't just bought a watch. We had acquired the controlling stake in the parent company that owned his franchise rights. It was a small acquisition for us, a portfolio diversifier, but it gave me a very specific authority. His manager approached him holding an iPad. "Christopher, corporate wants a word. Zoom meeting. Now." Christopher probably thought he was getting a promotion. Or maybe a warning about social media usage. He didn't expect to see the regional director and a representative from HR on the screen. And he certainly didn't expect the third window to be blacked out labeled simply ownership. "Mr. Mercer," the director said, his voice clipped. "We have received thousands of complaints regarding a video you posted. Gross misconduct. Conduct damaging to the brand reputation. Hostile behavior." "It's a private family matter," Christopher stammered, his confidence evaporating. "It's just a joke." "There is nothing funny about assault," the HR representative cut in. "And there is nothing private about 4 million views. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you out." "You can't do this, my sister." "Your sister," I said, unmuting my microphone but leaving the camera off. My voice filled the room, amplified by the conference speakers. "Your sister is the majority shareholder of the holding company that signs your paychecks, Christopher, and she has a zero-tolerance policy for bullies." Silence. Absolute suffocating silence. "Pack your desk," I said, "and leave the demo watch. You can't afford it." I ended the call. One down. They came to my gate on Thursday. It was inevitable. When a narcissist loses control, they don't reflect, they attack. It is a psychological phenomenon known as narcissistic collapse. The facade crumbles, the grandiose self-image is punctured, and what spills out isn't remorse but pure, unadulterated rage. They cannot process shame, so they convert it into aggression. They have to destroy the mirror that showed them their true reflection. I watched them on the high-definition security monitors from the safety of my kitchen island. Angela's luxury sedan, leased of course, was idling aggressively at the iron gates of my estate. I had bought this property under an LLC 6 months ago. 20 acres of woodland, a modern glass fortress, completely invisible from the road. They must have paid a private investigator to find the address. Angela was leaning on the intercom buzzer, her face distorted by the camera lens. Christopher was pacing behind her, kicking at the gravel, looking like a man who hadn't slept since he lost his job. "Open this gate," Angela screamed. The audio was crisp, filtered through the high-end system. "You tricked us, you let us think you were poor, you liar." That was their narrative now. Not that they had burned me, but that I had deceived them. In their twisted logic, my success was a betrayal because I hadn't shared it. They felt entitled to the wealth they had mocked me for not having. "We know you're in there, Emma," Christopher yelled, leaning into the camera. "You owe me my job, you owe us." I pressed the talk button. "I didn't open the gate. You are trespassing on private property." "Trespassing," Angela shrieked, her voice cracking. "I am your mother, you have millions, millions, and you let me wear last season's coat, you let us struggle, you ungrateful, manipulative." "I am not your mother," I corrected, my voice flat and metallic through the speaker. "I am the selfish trash you poured coffee on. Remember?" "Open the gate, Emma. We need to talk about compensation. You embarrassed us globally. We are going to sue you for defamation." "Truth is an absolute defense against defamation, Angela, and the video you filmed is the only evidence I need." I glanced at the second monitor. A black SUV was pulling up the driveway behind their sedan, lights flashing silently. "Also, you should know that I have a restraining order pending based on the assault. The police arriving behind you are here to enforce it." On the screen, blue lights reflected off Angela's car. Christopher froze, his aggression evaporating instantly. Angela looked at the approaching officers, then back at the camera, her face crumbling from rage into fear. "Goodbye," I said. I cut the feed. The silence that followed was expensive. It was the silence of a high-end HVAC system of triple-paned glass of absolute safety. 2 weeks later, the dust had settled into a thick, permanent layer over my family's old life. Christopher was unemployable in the city. The viral video was the first thing that popped up when anyone Googled his name. Amanda had lost her sponsorship deals. Brands do not like influencers who laugh at assault. Angela was essentially under house arrest, too ashamed to show her face at the club where the incident happened. I sat on the deck of my cabin, the mountain air cool against my healing skin. My phone buzzed. It was a lawyer, but not one I had hired. It was Grandma Rose's attorney. "She wanted you to know immediately," the lawyer said. "She has rewritten the will. The estate, the trust, the property, it is all being transferred to you." "I don't need it," I said. "I have enough." "She knows," the lawyer replied. "That is exactly what she said. She said, 'Give it to Emma. She is the only one who didn't need it, which is why she is the only one who deserves it.'" I hung up. I looked out at the tree line. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel giddy. I felt light. The weight of their expectations, their cruelty, their noise, it was all gone. I picked up my phone, opened the family group chat one last time, and pressed delete group. Then I whistled for my dog, climbed into my truck, and drove toward the horizon. The rearview mirror was empty, and the road ahead was entirely mine.